Hello everyone, welcome back to the Java tutorial series. In this video, we are going to learn about instance variables in Java. We will understand what they are, where they are declared, how they work with objects, and also we will see some practical examples. Okay. So, first question is, what are instance variables? An instance variable is a variable that is declared inside a class but outside all methods. Okay, so here it is written variables declared inside a class but declared outside all methods, constructor and blocks. Okay, so inside class, then class name xyz, and so far I have used the word properties, right? And after properties I was declaring variable like int age, string name. Okay, and after this I was writing like this behaviors. So this int age, these properties which I was declaring, these properties are instance variables. Okay, so by definition they are saying like variables declared inside a class. Okay, these variables are declared inside the class, correct? Second point is saying declared outside all methods, constructor and blocks. So inside class we will be having methods, constructor and many more blocks. So this instance variable should not be inside of any of these. This should be all of these things. So these properties are directly into the class, not inside any method, any constructor and any blocks. Or in other words, it is outside the methods, outside the constructor, outside the blocks. Okay. And the third point, it should belong to an object of the class. So when we create an object, let's say xyz, okay. So object, how the object will create xyz equals to new. We will create new, okay, new and xyz, like that we will create object, right? So this object will have what properties? What properties this object will have? So this object will get created in the heap memory, and what properties this object will have? Age and name. Why? Because here we have defined properties of xyz class is age and name. So the same properties this object will be having. Okay. So I was using the word property as of now, but after object creation, instead of calling these variables as property, we will call it as instance variable. Why instance variable? Because an object is created. So object is called instance, and the variable we call it as instance variable because it is associated with the instance, and these are variables. That's why we are calling instance variable. Until then I was calling properties of an object, like that I was referring. Properties of an object. Properties of an object created in the heap memory, like that I was saying. Because in previous videos I didn't want to confuse you with this new semi-special word, instance variable. So now we are learning any properties associated to the object, we call it as instance variable. So age and name are what? Instance variable. We will not call properties of an object. Okay, we will call instance variable. And these are definitions. Variables declared inside a class. Okay, this is present inside the class, and it should be all outside of all methods, constructors, and blocks. And the third one is the most important. It should belong to an object, in bracket instance. Are you getting? Instance means what? Object only. So this variable should belong to object, that is instance. So since this object is of xyz, it is created from xyz class, and we have defined properties age and name xyz class inside xyz class. So these properties will definitely come to this object, will have this object. So instead of calling properties here, we will call instance variable. Okay, yeah, I hope it is clear. Now let's see what is the syntax of the instance variable. So let's say, for example, we created one class student, and we have defined this properties name and age. Okay, now when we create an object of student class, student s1, student is what? Class name. S1 is what? Reference variable equals to new. Okay, we are creating object. Okay, student, and we are passing something name Vicky and age 20. So this object will get created in the heap memory. Okay, so let's say this is heap memory. So in heap, object will get created. How? So this is student object, and this object will have instance variable. Inside object we will have instance variable, that is name, age. And what will be the value of this name and age? What we have passed? Vicky. So name will be Vicky. What is the age? What we have passed? 20. So age will be 20. So in the heap memory, this is heap memory, we will have student object, and this student object will have instance variable. These are what? Instance variable, name and age. Okay, since we have defined class student with properties name and age, so after object creation, these properties will come to the object, right? Why? Because class is a blueprint of object. So class will have the definition that what properties and behaviors that object will have. So after object creation, the same properties will come, name and age, to that object. But here, instead of calling properties, we will call instance variable name and age. Now we will see some example before going to memory allocation. Okay, and in IntelliJ, what we are reading? We are reading instance variables. Okay, so let's create one class. What class we are creating? Let's say student. Now what is present in the class? We will define properties. So class student has properties. What properties? Let's say string name, and int age. So these are the properties of this class. Okay, so I am not defining behaviors, methods as of now. Okay, I will create one main method in order to run the application. Okay, public static void main string arguments. Okay, so this is main method, and inside main method I will create an object s1 equals to new student. Okay, I have created one object. Likewise, I will create another object. Student s2 equals to new student. I have created two objects. Okay, and both objects will have instance variable name and age. Okay, this time we won't say like this each object will have properties of the object. So in previous video I have used these terms. After object creation, this object will have the properties name and age, like that. But now we will use the terminology that is instance variable. So after object creation, we will have instance variable that is name and age for this object, and similarly we'll have instance variable name and age for this object. Okay, so now we will assign the values for those instance variable. What is the instance variable? Name. So I will assign name. Okay, what is the age? So these are instance variable. I am assigning the values 20. Now similarly for second object, instance variable name Rahul, then age equals to 20, 22, let's say 23. Okay, now I will print. What I will print? I will print s1 dot name. Okay, s1 dot age, and similarly instead of s1 I will write here s2. Okay, so I just press Ctrl D. If you press Ctrl D, that means it will copy the same line. It will create one duplicate. Okay, so shortcut key is Ctrl D. Now we are printing s1 and s2, both instance variable values. Let's run and check. So see, Vicky 20, Rahul 23, name and age we have printed. So each object has its own copy of instance variable. We'll write here, each object has its own copy of the instance variable. So for this one, different instance variable, for this one, different instance variable. So we can assign different values to this object and we can assign different values to this instance variable. So changing the values in one object does not affect the values stored in the other object. Okay. So the main agenda of this explanation is to both objects will have their own respective instance variable and we can assign different values to both object with different values, and that's what we printed. And since we are using a default constructor here and we are not passing any, we have not defined any default constructor, so by default the default values of these properties will get assigned to these both objects. In the later lines of code we are assigning values. Okay, so what will be the default values for this data type? For string it will be null and for integer it will be 0. So if we try to print the name and age before assigning, it will be default values. Why default values? Because here default constructor is getting called, so it should be, name should be null and age should be 0. Let's verify. See, null 0 for both s1 and s2, and after assigning values the instance variable values are modified. Okay, Now the question comes, how do we access instance variable? How are we accessing? Accessing means using. How are we using instance variable or accessing? Okay, so instance variables are accessed using object name and the dot operator. Okay, object name and the dot operator. So here we have created s1 student object. Okay, it is referring to student object. So s1 dot, using dot operator, we are accessing instance variable. So if anyone asks, how do we access instance variable value or instance variable simply? So using object and dot operator. So object, what is the s1 and s2 are the two objects. Okay, s1 dot instance variable, s1 dot instance variable. Similarly for s2. So s1 and s2 are not objects. Okay, s1 and s2 are what? S1 and S2 are reference variable which are referring to object. By memory wise we are clear, but here for understanding I am saying like S1 is object. Okay. Now we will go to memory allocation. How the memory allocation for instance variable happens. Let's check. So memory for instance variable is allocated when object is created using the new keyword. So when the object is no longer referenced, it becomes eligible for garbage collection. Okay. Okay. So suppose we are creating an object student s1 equals to new student, and let's say we are passing some value wiki, only one parameter. Okay, so since we are using here new keyword, that means in the heap memory this object will be getting created. So we'll be having student object, what this object will be having? Instance variable. So here we are passing one value, that is name. So name is the instance variable, and what value it will be having? Wiki. Okay, so this is an object, student object, having instance variable name with value wiki, and it is created in the heap memory when we are using new keyword. So this is the execution of this whole statement. So we are talking about here instance variable. So where these instance variables are stored inside objects. So here you can see instance variable is name, we are passing, right? Student has name. Student class will have property name. So that property after object creation we call it as instance variable. So that instance variable will be residing where? Will be residing inside the student object. This is what is student object. And inside student object we have the instance variable. Okay, the name is instance variable. So instance variables are stored inside objects. So this is student object, and inside student object we have instance variable. Okay, created when an object is created. So in this statement we are using new keyword. So new keyword means this object will be created in the heap memory, and during object creation only, at the same time only, this instance variable will be created. And where it will be created? Inside the student object. So that's what it is telling. Instance variables are created when an object is created. Okay. And what is telling? Destroyed. Instance variables are destroyed when the object becomes eligible for garbage collection. Okay. When an object will become eligible for garbage collection. So here, if you focus on this line, we have written student s1. S1 is what? Reference variable. reference variable. Where it is sitting? It is sitting in the stack memory. Here somewhere we have stack, and inside stack memory where s1 is sitting, and this s1 has memory location of this object, student object. Okay, memory location, and so that it is pointing to this object, student object. That means s1 is a reference variable sitting in the stack memory, and s1 is referring to this object. And suppose in the further lines of code, this object is not referenced by any of the variable. Suppose we have not referenced anywhere, then there is no reference to this object, and this object is sitting in the heap memory. Then garbage collector, there is a concept of garbage collector. What it will do, since there is no reference to this object, it will destroy this object. So garbage collector is a mechanism. It will check on regular basis, regular time period, whether an object is referenced or not. If it is not referenced, then garbage collector will destroy this object or delete this object from the heap memory. So garbage collector follows one algorithm, mark and sweep algorithm. Okay. So sometimes in interview they will ask like which algorithm garbage collector works, like that. Okay. So okay, this is out of topic, but memory allocation we seen how it works. So during object creation only, the instance variable will be getting created inside the object. Okay. Now we will see the difference between instance variable and local variable. What are the differences? Just now we studied what is instance variable. So we know what is instance variable, and local variable we already know. Whatever we defined inside the method, or that is local variable. Okay. So the basic difference is instance variable declared inside class and local variable declared inside method. So we need to focus here, method, class. So every time whenever I create class student, I say like properties, and inside properties I'll be declaring some of the variables. So those variables are what? Instance variable. And inside method, inside main method, if I'm saying int x equal to 10 inside main method or any method, then this is local variable. So this is basic difference. If it is inside class, instance variable. If it is inside method, it is local variable. Now next point is, this variable, instance variable, belongs to an object. Just now we have seen, if we are using new keyword, object will get created in the heap memory, and during object creation only, instance variable will be created in the object, and local variable belongs to method. So the scope of the local variable is within the method. Outside method we cannot access that local variable. Okay. And instance variable has default values. If we are calling default constructor, we are not passing any arguments, then it will execute default constructor and will assign default values to the instance variable. Let's say instance variable has a string. We have seen, right? So for a string it will be null. For int, the default value will be 0. In the output we have seen. And local variable don't have any default values. Okay. And instance variable is accessible throughout class. We can access this instance variable throughout class. We can directly use that variable inside class. And this local variable is accessible only inside method. That is scope. They are talking about scope. Outside the method, we cannot use that local variable because the scope of that local variable is inside method only. Now next point is, instance variables are stored within the object. So this is object created in the heap memory. So inside object, instance variable will be there, instance variable. Okay, and it is stored in the method execution. So whenever this method will get executed, this local variable will get executed. So these are the differences between instance variable and local variable. So in the coming videos, I will use this concept while explaining that instance variables are getting assigned with this and this value, and I am defining local variable. So you should be aware like in what context I am talking and which and all variables are there. Okay. So the key points are declared inside a class, what instance variable, but outside methods. Okay, we have seen. We have summarizing what we have learned so far. So instance variable, I will write here. Okay, instance variable declared inside a class but outside methods. Every object has its own copy of instance variable. We have seen. Okay, automatically initialized with default values. If we are not passing any arguments while object creation, then it will pick automatically default values. We have seen for string, null, and for int 0 likewise. So based on that data type, the default values will get assigned, and it is accessed using object references. We have seen, right? Student s1, we have seen student s1 equals to new student. We have defined something like that. Then how we are accessing instance variable? S1 dot name and S1 dot age. So these are what instance variable. How we are accessing this instance variable? Using dot operator and the object references. These are what object references, and it stores the state of an object. So instance variable stores the state of an object. So at particular point of time, for that particular instance, what is the value of instance? So it stores the state of an object. Okay, so that's all for this video. I hope you understood the concept of instance variable. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.